Hi, Jeremy here, Modern Vitality. In today's video, I'm responding to some questions I've seen in our solutions and support group over the years. I've seen variations of the same kind of question. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the 4 stages of healing plus the 5th stage and how we use that to get you out of this hibernation mode. And what do I mean by hibernation mode? I'm talking about these diagnoses like hypothyroidism, adrenal fatigue, right? These kind of situations where you tend to be cold. Or this can go the other way. You can be in hibernation mode, but also be kind of smoldering, where you have this low-grade inflammatory process all the time. So I'm going to break this down. It's going to be a pretty detailed video, so I'd suggest, get your notebook and get your pen, because we're going to be looking at this and how to be creative and non-linear with the 4 stages plus the bonus 5th stage, right? So that we can actually cultivate a metabolism that's capable of taking pathogens, taking things out of our body that don't belong there, and helping us actually get our vitality back. All right, let's get started. So if we start out in this place where we're basically okay, right? We're fine. We're not sick. We're healthy. We're just living our lives. There's no complex chronic health condition, nothing like that. That's a great place to be, right? This is where we want to live. However, life happens, and sometimes we're going to be exposed to triggers, right? And these triggers can come in the form of pathogens. So both natural and man-made pathogens. I'm including all kinds of chemical exposure and things like that, as well as viruses, mold spores, bacteria, everything, right? Weather changes can be another trigger. We can also have foods, right? Difficult foods or trouble with the way you're eating. We have stress. We have trauma. We have injury, like a physical injury, like a car accident, for example, or breaking a bone. We also have depletion. So this will give you an idea about some of the triggers, right? Depletion means like you haven't been sleeping, you've been either overworking, overplaying, that kind of thing. Something can happen, and these triggering events oftentimes combine. So it's a matter of eating foods that don't agree with you while you have a lot of stress and you got exposed to the latest virus going around, something like that, right? And eventually you hit a point where this threshold breaks and now we have a problem. So these triggers will come into your body, and basically I'm just going to draw this kind of hypercube to represent the complex system that is your human body, right? Because every system is connected and interrelated, and it looks like total chaos until you know how to understand it. But basically your body system's job is to have different ways to offset the pressure and the challenges of these triggers. So you may have, for example, a stress trigger, and your body, because it's resilient, can work itself out. Right? So the best case scenario is that your body systems are just adapted and you're resilient and you go back to being okay. Now this is normal. This is good, right? This happens. And sometimes part of this process includes inflammation. Of course, inflammation is not a bad thing. So for example, a little kid gets chicken pox, right? Or they get the flu or something like that. And that enters their system, and their system has natural processes in place and works it out. The kid gets the fever, the kid breaks a sweat, and the kid goes back to being healthy and normal and playing on the playground, right? However, sometimes, for whatever reason, we don't have the systems in place to sort these things out ourselves. And what happens in that case is it starts to become chronic, whatever this is. These triggers have started to do some kind of damage, some kind of lasting damage. And there's going to be inflammation here, right? Chronic inflammation. And this is our body trying to figure out what to do. And what are some of the symptoms we can get with this? Well, there's pain, right? There's brain fog. It's a big one. We can also have this kind of low-grade fever where we're a little bit hot all the time, but not in a metabolically healthy way, right? And this happens more often than not. Another one, too, could be swelling. I'll put that over here. Because your body's going to be drawing in and accumulating fluids to try to offset the heat of the low-grade inflammation. So what's happening here is with the chronic inflammation, we're getting what's called a non-specific immune response, which means basically that your body is just throwing whatever it can at these problems, especially if there's immune triggers like pathogens involved. Your body just doesn't know exactly how to deal with the one thing, so it's trying more general approaches, and that just creates long-standing chronic inflammatory processes. Now, part of the deal here with chronic inflammation is that you'll get increase in free radicals, right? Because what your body's doing is you actually want, if you have pathogens involved, you actually want to have increased free radicals. You want to have oxidation happening. I know people talk about antioxidants. They're so healthy. They're superfoods. Everything's situational. And this is why it's so important to have a whole systems understanding of these things, because if you just follow the trends or whatever the latest celebrity doctor or the latest fad is, you're going to wind up taking things that are like superfoods. But if you're in this kind of situation, those are going to actually work against you. You want the free radicals because that's one of the things that your immune system uses to help destroy pathogens that are there. because these pathogens are trying to rot you, right? You got to understand that they're trying to eat you. That's their job. Mold spores, mycotoxins, all these things are designed to break you down and turn you into soil again. So we need to understand that there's a rotting process happening, and one of the ways to offset that is to actually have inflammation and free radicals going up. The free radicals, however, when you're stuck in a nonspecific immune response, the free radicals can wind up doing more harm than good and lead to oxidative stress, which you may have heard of. And basically what that is rusting. This is where you're starting to do more damage inside your body as well. It's like collateral damage, right? And this causes damage to your terrain. And some of this has to do with because the immune system's not specifically responding to the exact pathogen with the context of whatever else is going on, being depleted, having weather changes, weird foods, stress, all this kind of stuff sets the stage, right? So when we have damage to terrain, we can also get pain here. We can also get brain fog, right? Because if the terrain of your brain and your central nervous system is getting inflamed from your immune system trying to hunt down these pathogens, you'll just get some collateral damage. So when we have damage to the terrain, we also have a built-in mechanism where we can have an increased stress response. So this is what happens here because the immune system can start kind of burning over here, generally burning. And once it starts to burn up too much, it can start to affect your nerves and other body tissues. And your body will then switch gears and go into a stress response. And this is where you get more of a fight or flight mode. And what happens here is we can get sleep trouble. Of course, we can get anxiety here, right? But what's happening in palpitations where you feel your heartbeat, right? Palpitations. I'll just put it there. What happens here is that when you have stress hormones come out in a short term, that turns down the immune system. So your body's trying to balance itself out. And we know that stress blunts the immune system because when you look at medications, right? Like cortisol, right? That's based on stress hormones. We're taking cortisol, turning it into cortisone, and then making a medication out of it that's an anti-inflammatory, right? That suppresses the immune response. You can see this happening. So stress tends to be anti-inflammatory, but not in a good way. It doesn't help finish this process. It just stuffs it backwards. So your body will start to do, for short-term survival, it'll start to stress itself out more. And this is where we see decreased heart rate variability, right? Where you're not able to get back into this parasympathetic state. You don't know how to relax anymore. It's really interesting, how we can tie all these things together because there are so many of these little trendy diagnoses, these little micro diagnoses that they're just pieces of a larger picture and a larger pattern. So when we have this stress response, what's going to happen is that's going to talk back. And what we have here, when we have chronic inflammation over here and this non-specific immune response, we have an active pathogen that's hiding in the body. And one of the things that happens over here is that we'll have decreased mitochondrial function. Okay, everybody's talking about mitochondria. Here's why. The mitochondria are smart. They're not just an energy powerhouse. They actually sense what's going on in the cellular environment. When they detect inflammatory processes, there's a whole feedback loop that happens. The mitochondria turn down energy production, right? They generate fatigue. They make fatigue. And that's good. The fatigue sucks, right? It sucks the fun right out of life when you're stuck on a couch or you're always exhausted and wiped out. I get it. But what's happening with your body, the reason why it's generating fatigue is to protect you. Because if you have all the energy and you get up and start moving around and doing jumping jacks and whatever else, that's going to increase your blood circulation. When your blood circulation increases, then you get pathogens being driven further and further into the body and oftentimes deeper into deeper tissues. So your mitochondria are smart and they start to turn down your energy level so that you don't move around too much, which isn't very fun, right? Because one of the things that can come off of this, of course, is depression. Are you depressed? I have depression. It's a serotonin problem. Maybe, maybe not. It might have to do with the mitochondria actually driving some of this, where you start to get depressed. And then also the depression, interestingly, can create more introversion, right? And you have a withdrawal from society, less desire to leave the house, less desire to interact with other people. Oh, I'm an introvert. Well, you might be conditionally an introvert because your body's smart and it knows other people have germs. So it generates depression to keep you inside and away from other people. This can really backfire, though, if you have a mold problem, because this would be good short term to just keep you away from other people while you heal. But oftentimes, if you have mold in your house, the depression, you just want to stay in bed all day, and then you're just breathing in more mold. So we have to interrupt that cycle in those cases, which is why it's really important to understand your pathogens and to understand your environment. So we have this low mitochondria, generates fatigue, and then what often happens here is we'll get, over time, this stress response that comes to help offset the damage of all the inflammatory processes, right? This will start to circle and create like a feedback loop, because now that stress, which takes a bunch of energy, creates a bunch of energy short term, but it's stress energy, and then that starts to wear out your battery. So we have this kind of loop where you'll start to get exhausted, and this is where they start calling this adrenal fatigue, right? That's kind of where this lives. And again, that's a diagnosis that it's just a piece of this. It's one little piece, but it's important to be aware of it. So then what happens once we get to this state is that this kind of cycle perpetuates itself until we get to a point where you're going to split and you're going to have basically some kind of chronic state that you enter into. And what's happening here is your body can either go kind of more of the smolder route, right, where your immune system's still kind of, everything's still kind of inflamed, and basically what's happening is you're losing your internal reserves. And if you think about a candle, right, if you think about your life being a candle, and you've got the wax and the wick and the flame, what's happening with the smolder is that the flame is going down and it's becoming a very small flame, but over time it's still carving out all the wax. So you're getting this kind of little deal here where you're just holding on with a little bit of a smolder. Everything's still constantly kind of inflamed. In Eastern medicine, I know this video is for people going through, like, on the healing side, people who are dealing with complex chronic health conditions. I know a lot of practitioners watch these videos to kind of learn more things, so I'm going to just speak to the practitioners here, especially if you've got an Eastern medicine background. This is more where yin deficiency tends to live. And this is where we get this kind of appearance where everything just starts to feel and look a little cooked. And a lot of folks with autoimmune conditions wind up here too, where they just start to feel like everything inside's a little bit dried out and a little bit cooked. And you can wind up with some of the common symptoms where you get this kind of scorched appearance, right? And I know people are sometimes self-conscious about this, but it's just part of looking at your body. And you have to, no matter what's going on, you got to love yourself and don't judge yourself. We're not looking at superficial things to try to win a beauty pageant or something. We're looking at the system and going, okay, we can see different colors on the face here. We can see that, the way the cheekbones are standing, or, the color on the tongue, or the way the gums look. We can start to tell a lot of clues about the internal health that way. So for patients, it's best not to get too self-conscious about this, and also just know that when you go through this process right, you can actually start to reverse some of that, and you'll see your color coming back on your face. You can start to see the vitality come back to your tissue, no matter how old you are, which is really pretty interesting. So we may get red cheeks, right? We might also get night sweats and hot palms, hot soles, right? Hot hands and feet. It's kind of a weird experience, right? Because inside you might not feel that warm, but your hands and feet are. And then we can also get a thin pulse. So for the TCM folks out there, that thin pulse, oftentimes it's rapid, right? And this is the kind of textbook yin deficiency pattern, and a thin red tongue. So for patients out there, you can be looking at your tongue and you can start to get a sense of what's going on with your body. Now, the other way this can go long term is we'll start to get over here, and this is more the hibernation mode, right? Now, this isn't hard and fast. Of course, people can oscillate between the two, but generally, based on maybe your DNA, your constitution, your trigger pattern, like all your lifestyle, what's going on, you're going to have a tendency to pick one or the other, the way your body functions. Now, the hibernation is where we'll start to get even lower metabolism, right? The metabolism goes down, and we're basically taking this stuff to an extreme degree, right? We're starting to get way more fatigue, lower metabolism. We feel cold, right? We're not hot inside, we feel cold. This is where, here's a great kind of, I know I'm going to probably ruffle some feathers here, but here's a great trendy diagnosis, hypothyroid. That's a result, right? This is your body turning your thyroid down to try to hibernate you, right? To try to wait it out. And this is where we get, for the TCM folks out there, this is more of the yang deficiency, right? So we might see swelling here, where you're just holding onto fluids and starting to just kind of accumulate, right? Because you don't have a lot of flame going to handle that. So the internal metabolism is basically slowing down. It really is just like a hibernation. It's a stasis, right? This is somebody who doesn't usually sweat. They usually have a hard time sweating. And this is somebody who oftentimes will have a thick, pale tongue, maybe with a white coating on there, right? We could have a very weak pulse, a slow pulse. I know my writing's atrocious, but bear with me here. We're talking and writing at the same time. This is the kind of thing where we can get the yang deficiency, where the vital energy of the body is just kind of dialed down, and then also more dampness and more fluid accumulation can start to grow there. So these are things we need to pay attention to. And I'm going to show you why this is important, because no matter where you are on your healing journey, when you start to look at the 4 stages and getting better, you need to understand the nuance of dealing with this whole picture. And of course, this is, I'm still like oversimplifying this stuff, but basically what we've got to understand is going from okay to problems happening in your system, like not being able to sort it out. This is where all these symptoms start to come from, right? And what's happening here is you're balancing out between the rotting action of pathogens coming to try to eat you and turn you into soil, right? Which is unpleasant, but it's still part of nature. You're balancing that with the ability to rust them away with oxidative stress. So oftentimes we look at these symptom pictures and it can be kind of messy and people don't fit into a nice, neat box. But one of the best things to do is start on a 4-stage process that works this part, right? We work on the healthy body systems. We work on making the system stronger, because this is the leverage point. If we can get this humming along and functioning better, you have a way bigger probability to be going back to okay. We can get from here to okay. It's just more complex, right? But this is part of observing nature. And this is when these conditions have gone on for a long, long, long time. So oftentimes we'll have, it'll be a little more heat here, some sweating, right? The pores are opening a little bit, but in weird ways. And over here, it'll be a lot more cold, no sweating, right? This is also the person, by the way, when you're in hibernation mode, I never get sick. I never catch colds. I've done other videos in the past. How come you never get sick when you are sick, right? That's kind of how we look at that. And the reason why is because the whole system, the immune system and all that, is like dialing everything down. So you may be getting exposed to the latest flu, a rhinovirus, a stomach bug, whatever, and there's no immune response to generate the symptoms of fever, chills, that kind of thing. And your body's basically not fighting back, right? So you are getting sick. You're picking up pathogen after pathogen, and there's just no response. You're getting kind of walked on in that case. So what I'm going to show you next is a way to look at this and to start to understand. This will be a little more fun, right? This is kind of technical, but I want you to know what's going on behind the scenes. And now we'll use an analogy so we can really understand what's going on here at a more functional level. So I want you to imagine that you have your house here, and your house is your body, okay? And I'm going to draw the door over here with the knob sticking out like this, and that means the door is closed to the body. And inside your body, you've got a guard dog who's awake and alert and paying attention, right? And there's your dog. And this is a healthy, normal way to operate. And as we move through the world, we're always being exposed to different things, right? So we may have a pathogen outside, a robber coming in, right? Trying to come in, and they see the doors locked, they have a hard time getting in, and they can hear that dog barking, right? So they know this isn't the house for me, and they don't get in, right? They leave. And that's healthy. That's great. This is what we would have here. Okay, right? That's what we called that. So the next bit we're going to look at are some different variations on this. So one of them could be, right, that you have a situation where for some reason your door was open, right? And there's your dog paying attention, right? Your immune system is awake and active, and here comes the robber, right? He goes in the house, right? I'm going to make the robber a guy, goes in the house, and then there comes the dog to fight him and chase him, and he leaves right back out. Again, healthy. That's okay, right? Now, what can happen sometimes is the robber can come in the house, right? Can get in there, doors open, here comes the robber, and they're battling, right? And the dog just doesn't know how to beat the robber, right? And this can cause a lot of heat, inflammation, right? I put some smoke coming out of the chimney. I should put chimneys over here too, right? There. So there might be a little heat with this one. So you can have this situation where there's this kind of inflammatory process where the dog is trying to figure out what to do with this guy. Right? Now, another one too, over time, might be the case that you have the robber comes in and the dog's awake, right? Here's the dog, and the robber is up here hiding. And we see this a lot with these hidden pathogens, latent pathogens, and we get reactivated Epstein-Barr that way. It's just hiding, it's latent. This is where we can get a lot of these post-viral fatigue kind of issues because the virus is hiding in the body somewhere, right? So in this case, the dog is kind of looking around, and all this guy's going to do is wait until the dog's distracted or the dog goes to sleep or whatever, and then he's going to start ransacking your house. We see this a lot with shingles, right? We get shingles outbreaks because it's a virus hiding in a nerve, just waiting, and then when something happens to deplete your immune system or whatever, then the virus kind of expresses and comes out, and then that wakes the dog up, and then you get all this inflammation. Okay, with me so far? So what else can happen here? Well, we can have this situation where the dog is here, right, in the house, and fighting with the robber, and it's just a lot of commotion, and you get all this, heat of inflammation, everything. And then we open the door, right? We come home, we open the door, and the robber realizes, I don't like it in here, right? I am out of here. Okay? And that's perfect, right? That's one way that things go. Oftentimes, when we look at stages 1, 2, 3, 4, this is more of the stage 1 type approach. And what's going on with stage 1 is that we're using specifically herbs, different breathing practices, self-care techniques, all these things to make sure that the doors are open, meaning the detoxification and elimination pathways, right? What does this look like? Sweating, urination, right? Bowel movements. We want to be able to clear this stuff out. Liver function. What else do we usually use in here? Things that help to, take this guy's strength down, right? So we look at things that have a bit of killing or wounding capacity, right? Maybe you're using herbs that stop viruses from being able to reproduce so easily, or you're breaking biofilms, right? So that they can't hide and defend themselves that way. This is a normal stage 1. This is like healthy and good and optimum. This is the first step, right? And then of course, after that, we have to rebuild other things, make sure the door can close, make sure the dog's healthy. Later on, you would do boosting techniques or boosting strategies that give you a stronger dog, so that next time this guy comes around, the dog is enough, he never wants to come in. Right? Because maybe you had a little dog at first, kind of a weakened immune system, or you were depleted, or whatever it was. So we start looking at it this way, we can see some other scenarios, right? Here's another one. So if we have our house, right, what happens if the door's open and the dog is over here sleeping, right? Now the guy can come in and do whatever, as long as he doesn't wake the dog up. And when we do our stage 1 therapies of trying to open the door, right, the door's already open, but there's no incentive for this bandit to run out, right? So sometimes we have to actually wake up the dog. We have to make the dog stronger. And interestingly, this is more stage 5. Okay, so stage 5 is where we use more of these boosting strategies. And this is where we use tonics and things like that. So oftentimes people talk about boosting your immune system. Oh, I'm going to boost my immune system. That's a great idea, except if there's already a battle going on, like here, right? Or the door's closed and they're battling, you don't want to boost your immune system more, because you're just going to create more problems. Anybody with an autoimmune condition has that situation where the door is shut, the dog's going nuts trying to attack this guy, and it's just a battle, right? But the dog's non-specific smoldering, biting and all that, if you boost it more, but the door's not open, it's just going to be more carnage and more fighting in there. Right? So this is what we get oftentimes, this stage 5 boosting approach, and I'm going to show you how we use the stages in more of a cyclical manner. But what you need to understand here is that this situation here, where the dog's sleeping, that's this, hibernation, right? So what can happen sometimes, people that say, oh, I've got adrenal fatigue, right? I'm doing stage 1 practices, and I'm getting a little bit of progress here and there, but I'm not a ton of things are moving. Some of my next questions are, okay, what's your body temperature like? Because I'm starting to look for this pattern, right? I want to start to confirm this. Are you cold? Do you have a lot of water accumulating? Are you sweating easily or not? What's your tongue look like? And I'm starting to get this picture going, okay, you know what? We've opened the door with stage 1, but the dog's still sleeping. So then we start to use the stage 5. And why do we go from 1 to 5, right? This sounds crazy, but I'll show you. Because we have I'll put it over here, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. And we know, if you've been following my work for any given amount of time, that this is immune system, digestive, right? Neuroadrenal. Then we have circulation and tissue repair. And then we have boosting, right? Now, what's really interesting here is that we think in terms of lines, but in reality, this is a circle. This is a loop. And we go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a wheel. Because your body works in cycles, right? It's not a linear thing. I present it in a linear way because it's easier to understand. 80 or 90% of people need to start at stage 1. That's why it's stage 1. But every now and then we'll get somebody whose dog is too tired, right? The immune system's not responsive enough. It's not scary enough for the pathogens, and it doesn't know how to flush them out because it's exhausted from fighting them for so long, right? So in that case, instead of starting here, we start here usually, right? And it's like, okay, it's just not progressing along as much as we like. We actually back up and we get a little bit of stage 5, and we get some, I'm just going to use the metaphor, but we get some herbs in the system that like wake up the dog, give it sharper teeth, make it a little more ferocious, and warm up the house. And what then happens is we combine that with the stage 1, and now we have an open door, and we've got an angry, pissed off dog, and we've got a burglar that is just running for the hills, right? That's the idea. Sometimes we have to go a little bit backwards, and then we get the momentum, and now we can follow the rest of the stages. So once you've gotten your inflammatory load down, then you can work on your digestive system and making that more efficient so you can actually get the nutrition out of your food and get your energy back that way. And then we work on calming down the nervous system. And this is important, right? Because we don't want to take this away immediately, because the nervous system being stressed out is in a protective way for the rest of your body tissue. So when people look at, this is why I have stages, right? Because when people come into my world, they've tried a ton of stuff. They go, oh yeah, I did biofeedback and all this meditation and all these different programs to try to calm my nervous system. I've been working on HRV. I'm taking different supplements to calm down my nervous system. Okay, great. But all you're doing is you're handcuffing your body, because this was a fail-safe to keep your immune system from destroying everything inside. So we actually need to work back over here first. You might not even need to do much for your nervous system if you handle this first, because then your body's not kicking in this protective stress response. I hope this is making sense. I know this stuff's very complex. I'm breaking it down as best I can. If you've got a lot of brain fog or you're having a hard time with these ideas, just watch the video again. Slow it down. You can watch it at 0.75 speed or 0.5 speed or something and really get a handle on this and try to figure out what's your situation here, right? What's going on? Because what I'm looking at is the terrain, right? The terrain meaning the strength of your house and your ability to open and close your door, right? And the inside is your dog and how much energy your dog has, right? That's your terrain. That's you. And then we're looking at the germ, right? The pathogen is how strong is this guy out here? And what's the interplay between those two? So oftentimes in stage 1, we'll use a bit of killing or wounding strategies to help take the power down from the pathogen. And then the more you can let your body do, the better. So if we just do a little bit of things here and then all of a sudden this dog like takes over and starts to learn what to do, then you've now got a trained dog. You've got a smarter immune system. Sometimes the dog is sleeping. Sometimes the dog needs to get woken up. And that's when we go back to stage 5 first. It's really interesting because, you can't be so rigid with this. You can't be so locked in. It's not a one-size-fits-all way to heal every single person, because people have a universal physiology, right? This is how the human body tends to, like right here, this is how the human body tends to have problems, and over time, how it tends to manage that, right? Just to survive. This is what I mean when I say your body's smart, it knows what it's doing. Your symptoms suck, right? It's no fun having all this stuff, but they exist for a reason. Even depression, right? Even anxiety, even sleep trouble. All these things exist for a reason, right? Low libido, of course, right? Your body's using all these resources to handle the day-to-day problems. It's going to take away from long-term things like reproduction, right? Of course. So we look at our symptoms and go, okay, they're coming from somewhere, right? But we can't be rigid and go, okay, every single person needs to do every single thing. We have a universal way or ways that the body tends to handle things long-term. And oftentimes the strategy comes from either elimination or isolation. So if you have pathogens coming in, you get exposed to all this stuff, and it hits your system, and your immune system knows what to do, and the dog chases it out of the house, right? Here, elimination. That's the best, right? Now another one would be isolation, where you have this situation, but your body goes, okay, the dog's tired from fighting, right? Maybe there was a fight, and now the dog's worn down after a bunch of time. And so your body, what it does is it closes that door, and it locks it. And the dog can sleep and rest, right? That's the dog sleeping. I went to art school, believe it or not. That's a dog. And then your pathogen can be hiding, right? Or just milling around, doing a little bit of damage here and there, whatever it is. And your body tries to keep this going for as long a period of time as it can. This is isolation. It's an isolation strategy, right? As opposed to, over here, elimination. This is preferable. We want to do this first if we can, but sometimes we can't, right? Sometimes we can't. We just can't. And then as time goes on, we start to get this isolation strategy. And this is, right here, what's going on when people are hibernating. And this is documented not just in Eastern medicine for those that are paying very close attention, but also bioscience is starting to discover these things in the cell danger response. I have a very brilliant colleague who was talking to me about this, and it's really interesting how much of this thinking lines up, no matter how you look at the situation, right? We can see this happening. The other way is the smolder, where basically it's an isolation, like they've locked the door, but the dog's still awake and just trying to like nip this guy, just like take little bites out of him whenever they can, right? And then every now and then the door opens and they try to kick him out, but that would be the night sweats happening, right? It's just occasional. It's not functional. It doesn't work. So this is what's going on, right? If your body can eliminate it, it will. If it can't, then it'll find a way to try to hold on until help arrives, right? And that's what we do with our 4 stages, right? Plus bonus 5 stage. This is help arriving. This is our job. This is where we come in. And we start to change the situation. We start to change the context. We get the door open. We wake the dog up, right? Once this has happened, and this is really cool because sometimes people just want to go through a little bit of this process and get some symptom relief, which is, I respect that, right? Everybody has different long-term goals. Other people will go through this and start to get their life back, and then they're like, okay, I need to circle back through and hit stage 5 again because I want to have a very strong dog. I don't want my dog to be falling asleep, right, and letting more pathogens in, because guess what? The world's full of pathogens. The world's full of triggers. You're living your life. You're going to have a late night sometimes. You're going to eat foods that aren't perfect, right? Sometimes you're going to hurt yourself. When you start feeling better and you're in like stage 4 and you're exercising again and you're moving your blood, one day you might twist your ankle or something. We don't want that to become a debilitating injury that sets you back to being bedbound. So you do these things. Stage 5 is more boosting. It's like long-term training the dog, right? Getting the door to open and close more easily. Making sure that you have this kind of resilience and flexibility in your system. So this is the general sense of things. And this is why when people say I had a question in our group about a naturopath or a functional medicine, somebody like that, they said, oh, my functional medicine doctor or my naturopath, they said that I have adrenal fatigue. And so I can't do detox immune system inflammatory processes until I've handled the adrenal fatigue, right? The naturopath or whoever that was, they're not wrong, right? We need to understand all this. Adrenal fatigue, it's going to live somewhere over here, right? But that's not the whole picture by any stretch. And so you can actually stack the deck. So you're working on this stuff and you light a little bit of a fire. You just dip into stage 5 just a little bit. And that's usually enough to start to catalyze that metabolism. And once you start feeling better, then you work your way around the circle. And what often happens is we wind up doing these loops, right? Like this. I'm just going to ruin this picture, right? But we wind up doing these loops where we're putting layer after layer after layer of strength on our body. So there's how we get better, right? It's a complex chronic illness. There's a lot of moving parts. I can make it more straightforward without oversimplifying, but I want you to understand this thing about the dog in the house and how your picture may change, right? Sometimes we go from this thing where it's like, okay, I've been in hibernation mode, and then all of a sudden, now you're like over here getting fevers and sweating and all this stuff, and you're going, well, what happened? I used to be in hibernation mode, and I felt like I didn't have any symptoms, and I never got sick. Now, I'm running this crazy fever, I'm sweating all over the place, I'm having these fever dreams and all that. Yeah, great, right? It's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable, but that's the sign that your immune system's waking back up, that dog's waking back up, and you're catching up on all the lost work of cleaning out your body. So it shouldn't last forever, right? This should be a pretty short-term thing where this kind of fire ignites and you're not in hibernation land and you're not in smolder land anymore. You want to make sure that you're approaching this with the right mindset too, because we get used to things, right? Oh, I'm always cold. That's me. And your identity starts to tie into that stuff. And all of a sudden, your body temperature regulates and you're not the one wearing 3 sweaters all the time anymore. And nobody knows who you are anymore, right? And you let yourself be new. You evolve, because this is a process of growth. If we want to get back here, right? If we're stuck here, or 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 we're stuck here, and we want to get back here, it's going to require a change in circumstance. And then being able to navigate that, right? Being able to climb that mountain in a way where we know we're taking this in stages, right? And doing it in a way that makes sense. And even if we backslide a little bit, right? Some trigger or something happens, we don't fall all the way back down the mountain. We got the map, right? We've got the map. And we have ways to tune in and check signs and symptoms and what you're experiencing and what your tongue looks like and what your pulse is doing. And all those things will tell us the state of your house, the state of your dog, and what's going on with these little devils that are trying to turn you into soil. Because one day, right, death is going to come for all of us. But the best we can do is cultivate life, right? Cultivate life. And we tell death, not today, okay? And the way we do that is we cultivate vitality. So if you're struggling with any of this, you don't have to be alone while you do it. We've got a wonderful group. It's international. It's called Modern Vitality Solutions and Support. If you've been following my work for any period of time, you probably heard me talking about it. It's a lovely place to be. It's a free group to join as a guest. You can come on in there. I've got a vault full of interactive videos. You can ask me any questions you like. You can meet other people from around the world that are all going through this kind of process and getting their health back and getting their life back. There's daily wins and inspiration. You can see in real-time questions, right? When people have problems and backslide and how we troubleshoot that so that it's not the end of the world if you eat the wrong thing one day, right? Or if you stay up too late or if you get a stressor. It's a lovely place to be. I would invite you to apply yourself, right? There's an application to join as a guest. You'll find it and I'll take a very thoughtful look. And if you seem like a great fit for our group, I'll get you in just as soon as I can. All right, let's get you feeling better. Cheers.